Greetings, everyone. Whether you're tuning in from the laboratory bench, the factory floor, or behind a desk, we are thrilled to have you with us. Welcome to the State of Calibration, a webinar brought to you by SIMCO Electronics. SIMCO is a trusted leader in calibration and repair services for mission-critical industries, like the life sciences, aerospace, and defense, where quality and compliance matter because lives are often at stake. I'm John Connelly, and I'll be your host today. I've spent over 15 years in the calibration industry and currently serve as Chief Transformation Officer here at SIMCO. Joining me is Walter Kromm, SIMCO's Vice President of Customer Success and a 30-year veteran of the calibration industry. Walter began his career in the U.S. Air Force as a calibration and repair technician. Over the past 30 years, he's held a wide variety of leadership roles in government, commercial, and OEM labs. Today, Walter leads a team that supports calibration programs at thousands of companies throughout North America. Welcome, Walter.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here and look forward to discussing some really important topics with Brian, our CEO. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Thrilled to have you here. And also with us is Brian Kenna, SIMCO CEO. Brian is an innovative and visionary leader with 2 decades of industry experience. He previously served on the A2LA board, and prior to SIMCO, led teams in sales, operations, and strategy in both private and public technology companies. Early in his career, he held investment roles at Comcast Interactive Capital and Goldman Sachs. With Brian at the helm, SIMCO has earned widespread recognition as an industry leader, garnering prestigious awards such as the Global Calibration Service Leader, the Calibration and Repair Company of the Year, Top 10 Life Science Compliance Solutions, the Gold Medallion for Hiring Veterans, and Best Place to Work. Welcome, Brian.
John, thanks so much. It's an honor to be here. And it really is a testament to the team and culture that SIMCO's built over the years. But looking forward to this opportunity to talk with you about something that's been a huge part of all of our professional lives.
Well, this conversation today is going to be candid and wide-ranging. We'll explore how political, economic, technological, legal, and environmental forces are reshaping the calibration landscape. We'll also dive into the industry's most pressing challenges and its most promising opportunities. Our goal? To inform, inspire, and maybe even entertain you while helping you form your own perspective on what lies ahead. And we want this to be interactive, so don't hesitate to drop your questions or thoughts into the chat at any time. With that, let's jump in. Walter, I thought we'd start with you. Maybe you can help ground the conversation a bit by summarizing why is calibration so important to so many companies around the world? And maybe also share your perspective on whether that importance is increasing or decreasing over time.
Sure, John, thanks for the question. I would say without question, calibration is increasingly getting more and more important as we find ourselves in highly regulated environments, aerospace defense, with the compliance requirements that they have. There's just too high a risk for failures due to measurement errors. So calibration is becoming more and more critical and important as things become faster, smaller, more intelligent. And we're helping our customers drive down the cost of their programs by being smarter, by being leaner, and driving out as much waste and eliminating the opportunities for errors.
Brian, you've made the observation that nonconformances, the cost associated with a failure, especially in industries that are highly regulated and where lives are at stake, continues to rise. Financial losses, reputational damage, regulatory penalties. Your thoughts on is that increasing or decreasing over time?
Sure. I don't think anyone's ever heard of laws and regulations being repealed. So it's an ever increasing body of work that's there for an important purpose to protect the consumer and those in harm's way by ensuring the quality of the products that these manufacturers are producing. The missions of these manufacturers in highly regulated industries is noble unfortunately, one or two bad actors or catastrophes drive a ton of protections to protect the warfighter, the loved one, the patient in the hospital, and they don't end up getting repealed. More importantly, I think there are over 4,500 FDA warning letters issued in 2023 alone, and many of them citing calibration deficiencies from the regulated environments. As you mentioned, the cost of nonconformances is ever increasing from the end cost where there's catastrophe all the way back down to the simple cost of quality for these nonconformances. ASQ did a study recently and said that 20% of sales revenue goes to poor quality. And that's the piece of delivering life-saving quality leaner that we want to help address. If we can shave percentage points off that cost while maintaining that high level of quality that customers need for an ever increasingly stringent technology requirements, tighter and tighter tolerances, then I think we're doing the world a service by making those products more affordable and more available and more reliable for those moments that really matter, whether it's on the battlefield or in the operating room.
You've touched on a few of the key trends we're seeing in the industry. Maybe before we dive into some specific topics, Brian, love to get your thoughts on some of the bigger trends you're seeing within the industry.
Sure. The biggest one, and I think the most pronounced one, is the geopolitical change that's happening here in the United States, reshoring manufacturing, while we have an aging baby boomer workforce where a lot of the people who have been trained by the military are aging and retiring. There's a shortage of skilled workers here in the US who are trained in classical metrology. The rise of software has driven a lot of highly talented people towards that industry and away from the more physical industries where they're desperately needed. A lack of training institutions outside of the military. While there's some, there just aren't nearly enough to get people into these highly skilled technical jobs that may not be coming from a university that's teaching a degree in electrical engineering or mechanical engineering, but are critical to the American industrial base. So the skilled labor shortage in the United States and globally is really a huge one. You hear Tim Cook talk about the number of engineers and highly skilled manufacturing engineers that are required to produce an iPhone, where China can turn out football fields of them, and the United States is order of magnitude shorter in those skilled technicians. That said, I do think American innovation and ingenuity really makes up for a lot of those differences. The geopolitical shifts that we're talking about, from tariffs to different national interests realigning, is a major factor driving where those skills are needed. And on top of that, there's a consolidation in the calibration industry, where a lot of the larger, more mature companies are consolidating into platforms, and oftentimes through private equity or through OEMs, where they're serving the interests on a financial basis of those larger companies, where the independent companies can really thrive through this consolidation. But that's just to name a few. I think a fourth one worth mentioning is the changing technology, which has really been catalyzed through AI, and right behind it, and I think right after it, is the automation through robotics that AI is going to enable like we've never seen before. So it's a fascinating time to be in a highly skilled services industry where people matter more than ever.
Well, we're going to go into more detail on a few of those things. Maybe why don't we pick the labor shortage you mentioned and the challenges around that. Walter, you've lived that firsthand. You're being trained initially in the U.S. Air Force, and then coming out and playing leadership roles in various calibration labs and companies for 30 years now. What's your take on that labor shortage, and how, what's the path to deal with that?
Yeah, I remember when I was coming through Cal School in the early 80s, they would put out thousands of students a year. They're probably a quarter of that now as far as the graduating students. So it's putting a bigger burden on companies like SIMCO and others trying to find, that qualified, competent calibration tech. So although we'll welcome those military grads, we're trying to build our own educational pool by creating an apprenticeship program where we align junior techs that might come from a trade school, and we'll bring them over to Simco and partner them up with a senior tech and train them on the nuances of calibration, because it is different than a traditional electronic school that might be more focused on production and R&D. We'll leverage third party companies to help train our folks. We'll also create, and we have, material inside Simco that we'll use as a training platform, we'll call it. Even virtual reality, we're using that to train techs remotely. And I would say the most difficult of all the tech attributes is to find that RF technician that's a diamond in the rough. If you can find that person, you should hang on to them at all cost. So although it's broad in the fact that we're all looking for that trained, competent Cal tech, it's even more of a concern when you're looking for that RF tech. They're even more uncommon. So between internal programs, external, we're having to build our own talent base. And the benefit of that is we can eliminate all the noise and just hone in on what is specific that Simco does really, really well, and amplify that and focus our training just on that. So although it's a challenge, we're looking at it, hey, there's an upside to this too. We can really take someone that's got some drive and initiative and help them with a career that might not have always been there. It's a combination of internal, external, and also being, okay with the reality, and attacking it head on. Be creative.
Really begs for a better industry-wide solution. But until that's in place, trade schools across the country turning out a larger volume of really qualified calibration and repair technicians, it's really up to the calibration labs themselves, as you say. And you talked a lot about the training and development of individuals. I think another big part of it is then retaining them. Creating an environment where they're happy to work and they see a career path for growth. I think that's really critical once you make that investment to find ways to keep the best people and keep them fulfilled and happy. It's an increasing challenge, and probably a bigger challenge is for smaller calibration labs that might not have that same capability to build out an internal training program or create an ongoing career path.
No, I think you guys articulated it really well. I think the American dynamicism hopefully will drive more towards a market solution for skilled labor. But in the meantime, we're figuring things out on our own. I know as many other companies are trying to do as well.
Brian, one of the trends that we're seeing is, and we're seeing it increasingly across all 50 states in the US and in other countries worldwide, is this response to OEMs attempting to limit who can calibrate and repair their equipment, restricting customer choice. Can you talk a little bit about what's driving that and what is happening in the right to repair movement?
Sure, and it goes far beyond just calibration. I think some of the instances of this that have made a lot of headlines are John Deere restricting farmers' rights to turn their equipment back on when they've replaced a part with an OEM provided part, just not by an OEM service rep. And cell phone makers voiding the warranty if you replace your own screen, or have an authorized service technician replace the screen with OEM parts, just not someone who was authorized by the OEM themselves. So in our world, it makes a lot of sense for OEMs for the OEM's sake, to restrict access to servicing because it protects their profit margins. For the end consumer, and in our case, it's soldiers on the battlefield, it's patients in the hospital, and it could be loved ones in any variety of other fields. out there, it really limits the effectiveness of that technology embodied in those instruments when the OEMs restrict the equipment owner's right to repair. I think it is also counter to what's uniquely American of freedom of the individual, resourcefulness, empowering the small guy to do amazing things by letting them maintain their own instrumentation, their own tools they need every day to do their trade. So, and it's artificially restricted often in the name of quality, but so many times these parts and service techniques are automated that it really is a function of margin for the OEMs, where by enabling third parties or equipment owners to choose which third party or do it themselves in servicing their equipment, in our case, calibrating it, we enable the speed to return to operations, original operating status, and the cost to do so to dramatically improve, helping us as an economy and them as a company be more dynamic and resourceful, putting profits into the missions that really matter, which usually extend beyond just maintaining your own equipment. So, in summary, I think it provides owners more and better options for faster time to operation, lower cost to operation. OEMs are often using this function to reduce the useful life of an instrument, saying we no longer support it, you can't calibrate it, you can't service it, you have to buy a new one. So that increases capital outlay. It's a lot of waste in the economy, particularly for well-made equipment. So everybody just benefits all the way around if they enable a free market for servicing of instrumentations. And the best will rise to the top. The people with the best quality and the best prices will be valued appropriately so by the market. And those who have poor quality or poor cost will get a reputation, particularly in the transparent world of the internet, that will follow them around too. The American free market works really well as long as it's shaped well by the right government policy. And we're at a point right now where the right government policy can really move this in the right direction. There are 50 states, all with pending legislation. Some legislation is much more empowering to the third party, the small guy, let's say. And a lot of it really has been hacked up by the special interests to reduce and limit the scope of that empowerment, which is where I think the federal government can step in and make a big difference for the small business owner and for loved ones, warfighters, and patients.
Great summary. And the example I always think of on a personal basis, and I think one that many people can identify with, is I don't want to take my car to the dealer after it's out of warranty. I might for certain instances, but in other instances, I might want to absolutely choose someone who's maybe faster, easier to work with, more, closer to me, and a whole lot less expensive oftentimes.
I have two daughters, one of which, when she was 3 weeks old, had to have procedure performed on her. It was a real sort of miracle of modern technology, what they were able to do so quickly in a highly specialized hospital, in this case, Stanford Children's Hospital, with specialists who had done 200 surgeries exactly like this. And the magnitude of the amount of technology and equipment they had in the operating room was just astounding. And to think that if something like that, it's one of those critical pieces of technology, were out of service and they had to wait for a service technician to show up, even if it were 3 days later, but in often cases it's months later or weeks later, would have been catastrophic for us as a family. And knowing that that equipment is there and available, supporting these critical moments in life, made such a difference to what's now a very happy and healthy girl.
Oh, what a great story. Walter, as you talk to customers all day, every day, customers meaning manufacturers, customers of our SIMCO's commercial calibration lab, they're typically manufacturers in aerospace, defense, biomedical, et cetera, looking to outsource their calibration to SIMCO in our particular case. You interact with literally thousands of customers throughout the year. What are you hearing from them as to what are they looking for most in 2025 when they're selecting calibration service providers?
I think two things come to mind that are most prevalent is predictable, consistent turnaround time or cycle speed, dock to dock, predictable, right? Because more often than not, they're accountable for the calibration program to their internal customers, whether it's quality, production, R&D. So a predictable, consistent service is paramount. You can't live without it. The other is to have a world-class customer success team that's tied in with the customer's needs and wants every day, every week, every month, so that we can react and predict before a crisis comes that, hey, we can actually overcome this or that or support this or that, but we know what the demands are within that client's environment. So we have a really well-read playbook on how we can help them be successful. So predictable, consistent services and an ear, an advocate that we love to be, right? So world-class customer success, those two go hand in hand. You can't do without them.
Thank you, Walter. Brian, other things you're hearing from customers in terms of what they're looking for in 2025?
I think Walter says it so well for what has been the mainstay of our industry for a really long time. The one thing I would add is in our ever changing world through technology, and it's particularly poignant for SIMCO being a spin out of NASA Ames here in Silicon Valley, having its roots and DNA really set here as a company. Embracing technology that continues to enable new things to be done in new ways is a key feature, I think, of any business, but is consistently true in calibration.
I think coming out of COVID, we saw more of our customers looking to consolidate vendors. Trying to find vendors who could provide a broad set of services for them so that they basically minimize their supply chain risk. Was a more recent trend I think I've seen picking up. Um, and of course, with these increasingly stringent regulations comes the ability to answer any audit question on the spot. So having software that demonstrates you are in control of your program, that allows you to easily demonstrate that your equipment is being calibrated on time and that you have all the documentation needed to demonstrate how that equipment that it was calibrated correctly as well. So I think that basically compliance component is becoming increasingly important. And I think with that software, there's also an opportunity to provide more automation, which allows customers to get more efficient. We see more and more customers getting pressured to find ways to drive cost out of their program. Anyone want to comment on some of those customers you've been hearing from on how can their calibration and repair vendor help them drive cost out of their program?
Walter, you want to give it a shot?
Yeah, I think if we're a true partner and we're looking for them to be successful, it's up to us to help them identify waste in programs and help them overcome that. If they're able to drive down the total cost of program, they'll be, I would say, more of a champion of services from within, and that helps with loyalty and building a long-term relationship with an account or customer. We have to be in lockstep. We just can't be, the company that shows up on a Monday and back the following Monday. We have to be truly part of their environment, part of what they're doing, interested in the outcome, invested, and helping them grow as they evolve as a business. Staying right there with them during their growth with technology, with solutions, whether it's software or cal and repair, But the whole entire experience, the life cycle of an account, we want to be very, very much a part of that all the way through.
Well said, Walter. That kind of mission alignment with the customer is so critical, particularly as we look at ways we can reduce unnecessary costs for them while not compromising on the things that are so critical to running their programs and serving their mission.
Seen a number of people running large calibration programs within large, aerospace, defense, biomedical, life science manufacturers. Basically, received the message from on up that, hey, you're doing a great job, but I need you to do the same thing next year with 5% less budget. So they've been challenged to find ways to lean out their programs, and oftentimes that's something that's an annual challenge, not a one-time challenge. We're seeing more and more of that. So, and the good news is there's opportunities there. There's opportunities to get creative in finding ways to lean out your calibration program without necessarily compromising on the quality of it. And so, yeah, I think we see more and more of that, and finding a vendor who can help and partnering with you on that, and has experience in helping companies lean out their calibration program, I think is a challenge we're seeing more often as well. Brian, one of the most exciting and fast-paced trends is the technology trend, AI. Being based in Silicon Valley here, and I know you have a number of friends in Silicon Valley who are actually leading the initiative in companies like Google and others. AI is something that we're all, I think, finding ways to embrace, and it's still very much in its infancy. You talked about your daughter recently. I think about your kids and how they are really the first generation that's going to be growing up, with AI as just part of their lives. What's going on in your head as a father and as a CEO, thinking about how AI is going to be so transformational to our lives and our industry?
Gosh, what a great question. It's one of the most exciting and fascinating things going on in today's world. The opportunity where things are going to change, and yet at the same time, there's a lot that won't be changed by this, in my opinion, that I think it's important for us to figure out how to navigate through it. There's a study by McKinsey in 2024 that says 60% of industrial companies are exploring the application of artificial intelligence into their equipment maintenance programs. I heard another comment recently that AI is the corporate Ozempic, reducing fat and waste across corporations so people can focus more on the core of what we can do so uniquely well that others can't. Right now things are changing so quickly. We're all trying to keep up. It's exercise in mental agility, I think, that corporations need to adopt to better serve their customers and their customers' needs. What I don't think is going to change is the need for physical world comparison of measurements versus more accurate standards. There's a lot you can do through statistical approximation, but it still can't totally replace a more accurate, scientifically, physically accurate standard to compare a less accurate standard against. And that's really the core of the calibration industry, and something that will still need to be done. The world of artificial intelligence in the information side of the economy will be absolutely, totally transformative. In the physical side of the economy, robotics and automation are coming for sure, but there's still very much a human physical world component that is critical and will be served out of laboratories across the world, including many of SIMCO's laboratories. To tell an anecdote about my daughter that you mentioned, when the one I mentioned who had the surgery at 3 weeks old, she's never known a world without a smart speaker sitting in our kitchen listening, that whenever she had a question about anything, could yell out, "Hey Siri, hey Alexa, hey Google, figure this out for me." And now they're never going to know a world without the tools like these LLMs and ChatGPT. So it's really an astounding time to be alive.
Yeah, and not knowing exactly how it's going to be applied, but the nature of calibration, um, highly structured procedures, highly repetitive actions, just feels like it lends itself very well to LLMs and generative AI.
Yeah, the data analysis is just one piece of it that can be accelerated with AI. That right now takes somebody plowing through a bunch of documents to look for trends.
Or very specific instruction sets to computers, where now there's much more of a flexible, fuzzy matching approach to it that can give a very strong answer, yet still needing to be reviewed by a human to ensure its accuracy.
You know, I remember early in my career as a repair tech, I used to have schematics and notes and post-it notes and things that would help me, refer back to a prior malfunction. Wouldn't it be great to have all that information, not in a notebook or post-it note, but have it somewhere that you could actually have that help you analyze, troubleshoot something that you've done a million times and identify within seconds, and not have all that paper stacked up next to you and have to repeat those same steps.
How many rooms of manuals have we had throughout the company historically?
Yep.
I think also worth mentioning as it relates to the metrology world and calibration, the ever increasing number of sensors that are driving things in our world. Just look at autonomous vehicles driving by themselves on the streets of San Francisco. People are depending on those sensors to measure distances, ratios, angles, objects correctly, and the need to ensure that those are measuring accurately and precisely is really critical. So as we have a proliferation of sensors in the world, the need for calibration, I think, is only going to go up. And if we can do that faster, cheaper, better than we could in the past, as an industry and as a company, we're all going to be better off in keeping up with this trend.
You mentioned Brian. I think actually Walter. Let's go to you on this one. A little bit earlier, we talked about the trend towards nationalism, bringing more manufacturing back onshore. Can you go into a little bit more detail about what's happening there and how that's impacting calibration industry here in the U.S.?
Yeah, absolutely. With that, it's going to come a higher demand for domestic calibration labs that have a network, so that have a reach back capability beyond just a single lab. That would definitely suffer from a lack of capability. Single locations just don't have the scale like a SIMCO does, where we've got 20 some odd labs throughout the entire U.S. that we can leverage for expansion, for resources, for information, and help support those companies that are bringing manufacturing back to the U.S.
We've worked with some Cal Lab managers that are all of a sudden inundated with work because they closed down a facility in Costa Rica and consolidated that work in a U.S. factory. We worked with folks who have gone the other way too and seen factories consolidated not in their favor. So lots of factory consolidation, but in general we're seeing, I think, more investment in manufacturing and new manufacturing technologies, including smart factories. Part of smart factories, I think one of the challenges is making sure that as they're putting in place software to manage the automation of their production line, they're oftentimes going to want to make sure that the calibration or repair software and data is synced with the data in their MES or manufacturing execution system. So some system integration challenges come up as well in a smart factory environment. Brian, other thoughts around this trend towards nationalism and impact on manufacturing?
Sure. I mean, this change in the world order, particularly as it relates to manufacturing, is a seismic shift. 74% of US manufacturers are increasing their domestic production post-COVID. I think the shock from the supply chain that COVID cost, that COVID created, and the costs associated with that, as well as these shifting national interests between China and the U.S., just to name a couple, really have a profound impact. Along with that means a whole lot of new factories that are coming online. Another study put out in 2024 by Statistica said that the smart factory investment in terms of capital was forecasted to exceed $375 billion by 2027. And again, these are all the new factories that are being stood up to support evolution of technology, but also the realignment of supply chains globally.
Brian, let me keep going with you. As you think about the future, we've been talking a lot about what some of the trends today that are impacting us today. As you envision the future, which you are so good at, what are some of the things you're envisioning that we should all anticipate in the future of calibration?
As an industry, we talked a lot about the trends going on, from technology shifts to global manufacturing shifts to rising demand of regulation, shortage of workers. I think the pace of innovation we should expect to increase as it has, but consistently, but it's hard for us to wrap our heads around. The increasing pace of innovation means company cultures need to adopt a more adaptive and learning nature to what they do and make it part of their DNA. And that's something we try very much to do here at SIMCO. I think the reliance on technology as part of that will be critical. So continuing to increase the percentage of sales and resources that get put into technology adoption and evolution is really critical. And then to focus more and more on the people side of the business and attracting and retaining the best people, because those are the people who are going to be able to leverage the machines that we've built, whether it's calibration standards or AI software and AI agents they're going to be holding the controls of, will be ever and ever more important. So I think the most important part of that is the right kind of culture to adapt to these future changes. And if you do that, I think it's going to pull you in the right direction. But it's hard to do systematically unless you're doing it through your culture.
On that point, just as a consumer myself, I feel like my expectations for customer service keep rising. I ordered a backpack on Saturday and had it delivered on Sunday, through Amazon. And that is carrying over to my expectations at work. Vendors that serve me, I expect, I have higher expectations than I ever had in the past in terms of the customer experience. I want to be able to connect with someone and communicate my needs, and I expect my needs to be met and to be expectations set. And if those expectations are missed, I expect to be informed. So I think there's an ever rising expectation in terms of the customer experience that is being fueled on the consumer side, but definitely impacting the business to business side as well.
As technology drives the increase in the standard of living globally, there is a increased reliance on technology, and not just the expectation of excellent, tech-enabled customer service, but in the reliability of the products. And again, I think that makes services like calibration, mission critical services, so important as a global standard of living rises for billions of people, primarily outside of the United States, who are going to demand safer, more reliable technology products in those moments that matter for them.
Walter, anything you want to add to that?
Other than I'm a consumer like John, right? The backpack example, we want it now. We want to know if it's not coming now and when it's coming. So we want, again, predictability.
That that comment about customer experience and Brian's comment about technology, I not only ordered the backpack on Saturday and received it on Sunday, but at any time between Saturday and Sunday, I could have tracked the status of that. And so that technology enables a level of experience that's unparalleled, and one that I think we're all trying, seeking to rise to the challenge and deliver that same level of customer experience in everything we do, and expecting it from our vendors. We've covered a lot today, from shifting regulations to the rise of AI and the choices facing calibration leaders right now. We hope the discussion sparked new ideas and gave you a clearer sense of what the future might hold for our industry. If you'd like to dive deeper into any of these topics or see how SIMCO can support you on your calibration journey, visit us at simco.com or connect with any of us directly. We would love to keep the conversation going. A big thank you to our panelists, Walter and Brian, for sharing their expertise and perspective. And on behalf of everyone at SIMCO, thanks to all of you who joined us today. We know your time is valuable and we appreciate you spending a part of it with us. So until next time, stay curious and stay calibrated.